What is going on, guys? We are back playing some more Surviving with Ender.io. Today we're going to be discussing the VAT, which is a very simple but effective Ender.io machine that allows the production of Ender.io fluids, which will eventually be very useful when you're playing through the game using Ender.io along with a bunch of different mods. So the reason that we're doing this today is in a few episodes I'm going to be covering stuff that's going to require some of the fluids that we're going to make today, or eventually that we will make using the VAT. Now the VAT is pretty general in terms of what we're going to discuss today. I am going to be focusing on one fluid, even though there are a bunch of them that can be made, but they all are made in very similar ways by inputting two different types of items and then a fluid, and then you're going to get a fluid out. So the one we're going to be focusing on today is nutrient distillate. Pretty gross stuff if you want to look at it, but it's basically pretty much green sludge. So right here you can see that we're going to be making this in the vat. Now, of course, like I said, there's a lot of different stuff that you can make in the vat, so if you want to make any of the other things, you should be able to follow this general procedure and just input different items or fluids to start. So luckily, this is actually really cheap to set up, does not require much at all. The only expensive part for this whole thing would be the dimensional transceivers, and they're really not that expensive, but you can completely avoid this just by positioning it well. I personally want to put it inside, far away from both my farm and my mob farm, so I need dimensional transceivers to bring both the rotten flesh and the nether wart to the vat itself, so that's what these are there for. I just have two basic item filters because those are going to allow me to filter out the two items that I'm going to be putting into this today. Then I've got two water buckets here because those are going to be used to make the infinite water source that will go into our system, considering nutrient distillation requires water along with the rotten flesh and nether wart. Unfortunately, you may be put into a scenario where you need to put in a liquid that you cannot make an infinite source for, in which case you will not be using the next item that we're going to make, which is the reservoir. Now, I think this is a pretty overlooked block when it comes to mechanism. It's really useful in terms of setting up infinite water sources because it pretty much just contains them and they can be put anywhere. So we are going to be using fused quartz. It's going to take 8 fused quartz and a cauldron. So we can put that right in here. And there we go. We get 4 reservoirs. It's a little bit weird in that it looks like it's got water in it right now. That's not actually true, but if we hold shift, it says when connected with other reservoirs, add 2 buckets of water for an infinite water source, produces 1 bucket per second, and right click with a wrench to auto enable output, or to enable auto output. We're not even going to have to do that today. I don't even have a wrench on me right now. The only reason is because we are going to be able to auto pull from the vat, so nothing to worry about there. You could also use conduits to transport the fluid if you need to, but that is something to worry about on another day. So now the only thing we have left to make is the vat itself, because we've already gone through and done all the different steps in previous episodes to actually produce the things that we are going to be using to make the nutrient distillation. So today's episode should actually be pretty quick. The only next thing that we need to craft, like I said, is the vat itself. Relatively cheap. The first step is going to be crafting 2 fluid tanks, which are going to be 4 iron bars, 4 iron ingots, and any glass that you can find. We should be able to use regular glass or Ender.io glass. I just had some quite clear glass laying around, so I thought we might as well use that. And there we go. So we need 2 of these, and then the rest of the recipe is right here: a cauldron, a machine chassis, a furnace, and 4 electrical steel. So we can put that in here, finish up the recipe, and there we go. We have the vat. Not a very spectacular block in terms of how it looks, but very, very useful. So we're going to be setting it up right over here because the vat needs to be hooked up to a power source. You do not just get to combine this stuff for free. It does require that it uses 20 RF per tick, so it does not need that much. You should be able to set that up very early on. It has an internal buffer of 100,000 RF. And unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, you cannot put capacitors in there. So you don't need to ever worry about upgrading it. Unfortunately, though, that means if you want it to go faster, you need more of them to just do the process more at the same time. So we can put the vat down over here. Trying to think of how we want to set it up in terms of space. We could probably just put it right here and be fine. So it's going to hook up to this power, and you'll see the max output, 20 RF per tick, 100,000 in there. The nice thing is you can go right here and you can click show recipes and it will bring up all the different recipes that you can make in the vat. So right here we're going to be making the nutrient distillation. There's a ton of different things that you could put in here to make it work. You can put in any head, then you could put in, I think, any raw meat, and then you could put in rotten flesh. So it's a great way to get rid of rotten flesh. On the other side, you can do both mushrooms, sugar, netherwort, fermented spider eyes, and I think that's it. Maybe there's one thing I forgot, but there's a lot of different things that you can do in different quantities to actually make it. And then, of course, the one main ingredient, which is going to be water. Now, of course, you can see that this has a use in making other Ender IO fluids, which will make even more. But there's also ones that will be made hooch, which can be used to make rocket fuel, which I believe can be turned into power. Or you can make fire water, and then you can turn that into liquid sunshine. You could also make cloud seed, and that can get turned into concentrated cloud seed. So there's a lot of different recipes that you can make. Like I said, all of them follow the same premise of 2 items being input at different quantities, a liquid, and then you're going to get one out. So what we're going to first worry about is putting the liquid in here, because that means we got to set up the reservoir somewhere down here, and I suspect I'd rather just set it up right here. So we'll get these blocks out of here, and gonna make my way down there. We'll put the reservoir down. Now, something I haven't really messed around with is where you place the water buckets in here to actually get it going. So it says you can put 2 in here. I've never actually tested it to see if you can put them in the same block, but it should even out. So there we go, and there we go. So that should be an infinite source right now. You can't really see it, but everything should be full. Now, if you do start pulling out, say you're using a bunch of conduits off this, you can drain the infinite source. It does have a production rate. I believe we already said it, which was like 1 bucket. If we look it up again, we'll be able to see. If we look up the reservoir, it says produces 1 bucket per second. So if you're pulling out faster than that, you're going to ruin the infinite pool. You may need more of these then, if that is the case. But if you're only using a couple vats, it really shouldn't be. So the first thing we're going to do is set this up to pull water out. And just to make sure I don't need a wrench, we are going to come down here and set it to pull from the bottom. And as you can see, you get a nice little visual of it slowly pulling out of that block. It's replenishing. A little glitchy on how it shows, but you can see that it's pulling water out there. We don't have to deal with the hassle of placing the water down first, wrenching it, and then putting this down on top of it. And then we can just fill in the ground down here. And then the last 2 things are just going to be coming from the dimensional transceivers. So one of them can go, I guess, right over here. And we do need to change some of the settings on this eventually. This has a local buffer, so there's not really a ton that we can do about that. And we may eventually send power somewhere, so we might as well let it fill up. But the only thing we need to worry about is putting items out the side here. And we can actually just set this to, we should be able to just set it to pull from this. And then eventually we will hook both up to this. So we need to go to items, and let's say Rage's base. Oh, might want a space there. Okay, so Rage's base. We can add the channel, and this is going to receive from it. Just simple like that. I know we've never really covered the dimensional transceiver yet. Very simple block, works pretty much like a tesseract. You can make channels on here, you select them, and then you click this button, and it'll switch it to either send or receive. You can do both. You can do one or the other. It doesn't really matter, but it works like that in terms of power, items, fluids, whatever you want to do. And then you can do filters for either send or receive, thankfully, because we're going to be using that today. So now what we can do is deal with the other items that should be coming in here. So the first one that we need to get in here, and this is getting pretty full of Enderman in here right now, but the first one that we need is going to be rotten flesh. We're running out of space in here, and eventually I need to move the bones into bone meal and over to the farm, and then I need to move the rotten flesh all the way over there to get turned into something that's actually useful. So what we can do is come down here and get to wherever the conduit is. It actually, unfortunately, might be over here. If I pull out a conduit, we'll be able to see if there's any facade on it. Okay, yeah, so it's right over here. So honestly, we can just break this and put the transceiver down. Ooh, getting a little bit of lag there. We can put the transceiver down right over here. And this should hook up fine. It'll look a little bit weird, but it should be okay. And then eventually, if we were to pull this stuff out, we should get that block that got sucked in there back up here. But it's not that much of an issue. So now that it's hooked up to an item conduit, we can make this send to my base. But before we do that, we want to put a filter in here. And I guess we don't really need the filter upgrades. I was thinking we would need these because I was going to put them in the conduits, but we'll just use this filter instead. So we're going to get rotten flesh, and oh, it already filled up. But we are going to check send filter, do that, whitelist that. None of this really matters right now because it doesn't have any damage or anything like that. So we can pretty much just set this to go. So we go to items, Rage's base, send, and it should be good to send stuff over here eventually. Okay, so for some reason I completely blanked on the fact that I need to actually add power to this, and there's no power coming in through this conduit right here. For some reason I assumed that there was a conduit over here that was running power anyway, but it should have been a dead giveaway that this wasn't actually lighting up. But now everything is good to go. It is getting transferred over here. We've got a receive buffer on this side, and this is completely full of rotten flesh. It even gives us the multiplier that we are going to need in terms of this, per stuff that we are making, per procedure that we are doing. So we are almost ready to go. The last thing we need is to get the nether wart over here, which is just another dimensional transceiver. And I'm going to sleep real quick before we go outside to get this working, because it looks like our farm out there is running into a little bit of an issue. Something that tends to happen, and I'll have to figure out a way to deal with it, is that eventually these panels get covered, so I may have to extend them up to where trees can't cover them. But off camera, I did swap out all the wheat that we were getting for nether wart so that we could start growing it and start harvesting it automatically for this setup specifically. It works perfectly. We've got a fair bit in here at this point, a full stack, and we're getting a lot. It'll be a lot faster once I eventually hook up the auto crafting and of course have bone meal over there. The nice thing though is it doesn't require anything to harvest it. Very simple to put in here and make work. Eventually I might replace the potatoes with it. I don't really know right now, but all we have to do is hook up the dimensional transceiver over here, and I'll just put it right here so it's easy to access. Doesn't really matter that it's near the chest though. And we are going to receive power from my base, and we are going to send items. But the first thing we need to do is, oh, now I can't access this. Okay, well, we'll just break this and grab one. That's a slight flaw there that I didn't really think about. You know what, let's break this and put it down somewhere else actually, because I'll run into a couple issues. I've been using the apples for food, so we can just put it, no, we'll not put it right there. We will put it right over here. There we go. Now it won't bother anybody. So we're going to be still receiving power here, and we are going to whitelist nether wart, and then we are going to send to Rage's base. So all the nether wart that we get should be going there, and we should be able to actually put this in the internal buffer then, and it should get sent over here and start filling up the internal buffer here. And you can see that this is chugging away. It does have some particle effects to let you know that it is running. Of course, then you can just click on it and see it kind of fills up this middle area with a liquid, and it slowly changes to a nice disgusting green color or whatever you're making, and then it will store it in this buffer over here. Each one is 8 buckets, 8,000 millibuckets, same thing. But then you will also have these options on the side, of course, typical redstone control. We already went over the configuring and the recipes. Lastly, we're going to go over the fact that you can void the output tank, and the reason you may want to do that, and I know a lot of people run into this when they have mechanism machines and you have to go make like the dropper to get rid of stuff, but that is so you can clean this out. If you've got fluid in there, you don't have anywhere for it to go, and you decide you want to make different fluids. So if you do decide that, you can easily just click this. I'm not going to click it now because I don't want to get rid of the stuff that we've already made. Not really that much. As you can see, 2 processes only got us to 1,000, basically a little bit over 1 bucket. But this one over here then is dump the input tank into the output tank. I have never found a situation in which I need to do this, but if you did need to do that, there is a button for it. It's kind of an obscure button, probably the most useless one on here, but you could just click that and it would dump it over for you. So that is everything about the VAT, guys. I know it's really not a long episode, but I have been extremely busy with exams. I don't know if I mentioned this in my last video, but I had 3 exams. It was supposed to be 4 exams this week in the matter of 4 days, and I was pretty busy. I had an organic chemistry exam, differential equations exam over the course of the last 2 days. I took my Diffie one actually this morning. So that is where I have been, and I will be doing a couple things over the weekend. So the videos again might still be a little bit slow until the beginning of next month, but I've mentioned this in a couple other videos. I will be doing pretty much daily videos over the summer for roughly 4 months, so hopefully you guys look forward to that. Again, I apologize though for the fact that I've been busy. Unfortunately, there's not really much I can do about it if I want to continue getting good grades, and hopefully you guys would agree that it's important to get good grades. But I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you found it entertaining or informative in any way, please feel free to give it a like, as it does help me out a lot, and I will talk to you guys later.